on, come on. Oh, you got it. Yep. Go. Good. Yes.
There's another record.
Alright guys, today on Macros Cafe, I mentioned I was going to be doing my hypertrophy work for my deadlifts, and I asked, if anyone has any questions, ask them below, and we got some great questions. Haley asked, minimizing trap activation. It kind of depends on what you're doing. If you're doing conventional deadlifts, you are going to get a lot of trap activation, just because your chest is up, your shoulders are back, and you're maintaining a tight back position, upper back position when deadlifting. If you're pulling sumo and you're getting a lot of trap activation, you're probably doing it wrong. With sumos, and again, I'll do a voiceover on my deadlift, so I'll show you exactly what I mean. But sumos, your shoulders you typically want actually down and forward. I like to use a cue of taking a playing card, putting it in your armpit, and then trying to hold it there. So basically you're pushing your arms into your lats and tightening up your lats, which should soften up your traps, so you won't get too much activation there. You mentioned that you're talking about changing up your programming to better facilitate it. If you are, what I would suggest, typically when you do a lot of high rep, high volume, when you get fatigued, you fall into the same bad patterns you were doing. So if you get a lot of trap activation, as you get fatigued, you might get tighter and tighter in your traps. So what I would do is I would actually cut your reps down and maybe increase your sets so you're getting the same amount of volume, but you're not as fatigued going into each set. Or so instead of doing 10 reps, do 5 reps, and then just do multiple sets. That way you can emphasize, a little more emphasis on your form. Lauren said can't relax her traps as well. She tries to think about relaxing your shoulders down. Again, relaxing your shoulders down I have found to be a bad cue with a lot of clients. It's just when you're lifting heavy weights, it's impossible to relax. So again, I would put more emphasis on other areas. So instead of thinking about relaxing your shoulders down, think about squeezing your lats and forcing your shoulders down and squeezing your arms into your lats. Again, I'll point out exactly what I'm talking about. Another great point is, again, you have sumo and you have conventional. It depends on what your end goal is, or your goal in general. I love sumo. I'm a sumo puller when it comes to competition, so that's primarily what I train. However, I do pull conventional to add a little strength to my back, meaning I use conventional for my back and sumo for a little bit of my back, my traps, but it is a lot of quad and glute activation that takes place when doing the movement. So say you're a bikini competitor and you want more glute and leg on your physique as a whole, I would suggest doing sumo over conventional as your main movement. Haley, you mentioned you're doing both conventional and sumo. I would pick one or the other, that way so you can put a little more emphasis on it for a little while, until you get to the point where you have specific weaknesses in your lifts. Example, when you're pulling sumo and you can break it off the ground, but you can't quite finish the lift, meaning your either your hip drive, your glute drive, or your back strength isn't where it needs to be. You can start doing back conventional to help strengthen your back. However, I would even go more towards the route of pause sumos over conventional to break through that barrier. Meaning, once you break it off the ground, get to about mid-shin, pause for a few seconds, and then continue through the lift to push past through your sticking point. Let's see here. yeah, that's about it. So I will go ahead and go through my voiceover and again give you guys some examples of what I was just.
Okay, so here's my last warm-up. If you notice, I am treating this like it is a 1 rep max. I treat all my lifts like it's the heaviest thing I've ever pulled because I made the mistake earlier in my lifting career to not care if it's a lightweight, and it's the one time I pulled my back. It was like 70%, and yeah, so something I shouldn't have injured myself on. Alright, so this is my first working set. I'm doing 5 sets of 6 at 320 pounds, and this is exactly what I mean by allowing your shoulders to go down, and then you contract your lats into your arms. In a second here, you'll actually see a side view describing more of what I'm talking about. So if you notice on each rep, I'm actually lifting my hips, taking a deep breath, lowering them. Essentially, I'm resetting on each rep. What this is doing is it's allowing my body to essentially decompress slightly before reloading my hips, and essentially I'm just practicing 1 reps, or at least making sure each rep is exactly like the last rep and each rep as efficiently as I can. Again, shoulders down, compress your arms into your lats, and then pull. Alright, now, and then you guys will notice I call this my hypertrophy day, but I'm only doing 6 reps and for 5 sets. Reason being is this is still more volume than I ended my last cycle with. Again, as I go through my cycle, I lower my reps, increase the intensity. So this is higher volume for me at the moment because I haven't adapted to it. A lot of people tend to ask me when it comes to my programming why I give them slightly more weight than they started with at the last cycle during the hypertrophy phase. Reason being is that as far as the hypertrophy work is concerned, we want to increase it slowly over the cycle in a linear fashion, whereas with the strength days I typically cycle those with percentages. Okay, so I'll come back to that. This is what I was talking about as far as keeping my shoulders down. I come back, as soon as my shoulder gets over the bar, I pull, but if you look at my lats are squeezed. I'm just forcing my arms into my lats, and then I break it off the ground. This tightens my back while still keeping a lot of the pressure off my rhomboids, essentially lower traps, and my traps as a whole. Okay, so going back to what I was talking about, over a cycle, 12 to 15 weeks, I'll increase the weight on the hypertrophy days in a linear fashion, so 5-10 pounds each week, which at the end of the cycle, that 12 weeks, that's 120 pounds I've put on your deadlift, obviously if we were going 10 pounds a week. So be excited that I'm not increasing your weight that much more than the last cycle. I've experimented and jumped substantially in my own training, and I paid for it. Okay, so after that I did some high rep work. Basically, I had a deload over the weekend on deadlifts. I was only doing, and squat and bench, and I was only doing 65% on my 1 rep max, but I wasn't able to finish my deadlifts, so I only worked up to a single. So I took my working sets, cut them into, made them into higher reps, and then cut the sets in half so that I'm still getting some volume, but I'm not basically fatiguing myself to where it's actually have an impact later on in the week. People tend to do this, and clients will ask me, do you want me to just go ahead and do what I didn't do this weekend and add it on to tomorrow? And the answer is usually no, just because I just want you to continue doing what you're doing. But I'm on a time schedule, and sometimes it calls for that. But again, I cut my volume in half and just got some additional work in after that. But again, even on these, it's really lightweight, no belt, nothing, and I'm still doing the same exact thing I was doing when the weight was heavy. Alright guys, that's it. Comment below or message me if you have any questions.